Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Cross-Border Remittance Innovation and Best Practices in EMEAI, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India. Today's conversation will be a moderated panel discussion. It will be approximately 50 minutes with 35 minutes of discussion and 15 minutes of audience Q&A. You can use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen to ask questions. For questions that we do not cover, we will send a follow-up email. This webinar will be recorded and made available to share. So please welcome today's host, Roxe's Chief Business Officer, Josh Lee.
Welcome everyone to the Roxe webinar titled Innovation and Best Practices in Cross-Border Remittances Across Europe, Middle East, Africa, and India, which I will refer to as EMEAI. My name is Josh Lee, and I am the Chief Business Officer for Roxe and the moderator for today's panel. Before I introduce our panelists, let me say a few words about today's agenda. We will cover three major areas. First, we'll talk about what is the current situation due to COVID and some current challenges. Then in the second section, we will hear the panelists' thoughts on best practices that they have seen to help remittance and payment companies overcome some of these challenges. Lastly, we'll shift gears and talk about innovation in the remittance and payments industry. We'll discuss innovations that are not based on blockchain, and then innovations that are based on blockchain technologies. After we go through these three major areas, we'll have a brief Q&A with the viewers. Now, let me introduce our panelists. Raghu Krishnamurthy is the head of sales, TCS Quartz Blockchain Solutions. Raghu has been with TCS for over 22 years, has been in various roles, but most of it with sales and customer relationship management. He spent his initial years in the US in technical roles and then changed gears to move into sales. He has been in leadership positions managing strategic accounts in Southeast Asia, followed by leading sales in the Middle East, Africa, and the Levant region for TCS Financial Solutions, a unit that focuses on banking, capital market, and insurance solutions. He now heads sales and alliances globally for the Blockchain Solutions unit under the brand name Quartz. Next, Alex Kech, CEO and co-founder OnChain Custodian. OnChain Custodian is an institutional digital custody service that offers a secure, compliant, and convenient platform to institutional players for the safekeeping and investing of digital assets. Alex has 20 plus years of experience in the capital market industry. From global custody and asset servicing at the Bank of New York Mellon to data standardization as head of securities and FX for APAC at Swift. Alex has developed a strong post-trade industry leadership experience extended in recent years to digital assets and blockchain. Alex is the co-chair of the Global Digital Finance Custody Working Group and is building an international standard for digital token identification. Definitely very impressive backgrounds. Now that I've introduced our thought leaders, let's turn to the first area of focus, the current state of affairs in payments and remittances. So my first question is, how has COVID impacted the payments and remittance business in the region? And given the rollout of the vaccine, how quickly do you see businesses recovering? So turn it over to you, Raghu, first.
Yeah, thanks, Josh, for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity. Actually, remittances is an area that's quite close to me. When I was leading sales in the Middle East and Levant region, and Africa also, one of the key areas that I was focusing on was payments. And in fact, in this region, payments, remittance is a key business line, considering majority of the people are actually expats who normally send money back home. And there is a significant amount of money being remitted to other countries from the Middle East. Now, from a Middle East perspective and India let me take the India perspective. According to World Bank, India was actually the top remittance recipient with about 80 plus billion in 2019. And Middle East actually constituted about 40% of that value. That's a significant amount if you can see the the total value. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that while the value is very large, the average value of the remittance itself is quite small. It's about 500 to 1,000 USD on an average, and sometimes even lower. And that's probably because most of the people who are sending money are skilled, unskilled laborers and people who are in the services side of businesses. Now, what happened is, last year, most of these businesses went under. They went bankrupt, and a lot of people were laid off, and so on. And so there was almost about 16 to 18% decline in the remittances out of the Middle East, and remittances to India fell to about 9 to 10% lower. Now, so this was clearly an impact, considering money that's flowing into India is declining, and that hurts the economy also. So what I see as we go forward, businesses, the recovery is going to be slow, specifically around remittances. Other industries might start seeing some improvement now. But the remittance, while it sees a bit of movement, it will not be better than 2019. Definitely not. It is still going to be quite bad. It is not going to touch $80 billion or even 40 for that matter. It'll from the Middle East, I mean. And there is a silver lining, because I recently read that Moody's upgraded the growth of India's GDP to about 12.6%. So that is actually good news in terms of how the economy is going to fare, and the downstream effect of that is going to be good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Raghu. Alex, what are your thoughts?
I'll take an angle of Raghu was great at providing the macroeconomics of remittance and how 2020 has impacted those numbers. What I like to take as an example is more the innovation and the acceleration of innovation that the COVID situation have led to in terms of technology adoption for remittance, and also I would say adaptation that existing providers of remittance have been looking at in 2020. It's been incredible to observe in 2020, and we're seeing that happening as well in 2021, how many different discussions are being taken or are being debated on how to make remittance and payments in general more efficient, not only at a commercial bank level, where a lot of banks have been experimenting various ways of doing it differently, be it using blockchain, be it using providers like Visa and MasterCard going into more of that type of business when it was not necessarily their core activities. Yeah. And then also, obviously, central banks looking at CBDCs and how the emergence of digital currencies issued by a central bank could revolutionize the way money is distributed domestically, but also cross-border, and how blockchain in this particular case can be used to enable and accelerate and make more make efficient and still compliant remittance cross-border. And I think 2021 and 2022 and the next 5 years will be absolutely fascinating to observe. And as an actor in that field, I'm excited about it, and you are as well, I'm sure, as how this model, that existing models will be evolving.
Great. Thank you both for your thoughts on that. So kind of, Alex, continuing to follow up to the first question. So obviously COVID has presented a lot of challenges that you said, spurring the innovation around the world. What are some of those challenges that you see in the area of payments and remittance space for the countries that you're operating in or just around the world?
I think challenges are around KYC and compliance, so money laundering and CFT requirements for financial institutions like us in remitting money abroad and even domestically is increasing, and for good reasons, obviously, with the digitization of payments more and more. With the digitization of the economy goes a lot of scam and money laundering and other criminal activities. We've seen that in Singapore. It was amazing to see that. I don't remember the exact number, but it's hundreds of millions of Singapore dollars that have been stolen from people by scammers pretending to be their banks and trying to steal their credentials. And it applies as well for cross-border payments. It applies for domestic payments. So fighting crime, fighting money laundering, fighting financial financing of terrorism is a challenge for any solution provider providing a solution out there, and it's something to always keep in mind. The second remains the costs of remittance. There are solutions out there offered by some banks who offer really low costs for remittance, or some providers. I think the 10-15% remittance fees of Western Union in 20 years ago are no longer true today, but it's still quite expensive, especially for small amounts. And I think there are opportunities out there to improve that, being using new technologies, or actually now mature technologies such as distributed ledger technology and other mediums.
Thank you, Alex. So Raghu, what's your take on that? What are some of the current challenges you see in the remittance and payments industry?
Yeah, I actually agree with Alex on compliance and of course the costs. And if I were to take the same, continue with cost, if I go a little deeper, cost is definitely a challenge, there's no doubt. And in fact, the average cost of remittance, as I understand from one of the World Bank reports, is about 6.51% of the amount sent. That's a significant amount. I agree with Alex. It used to be 15% Western Union, but that's come down significantly. But there is, I think, even 6.5%, or this is the average cost. So it actually goes to about 10% in some cases. Now, if you look at that value, that's a significant amount of value. So that's $10 for every $100 sent that you have to pay for the remittance, and I think that's high in my opinion. And I think the reason this is also one of the reasons why a lot of people that I know in these developing markets in Middle East region, they don't even want to take the remittance route. They would rather carry cash back, which is a lot more riskier, back to their home countries, and we have to change that. I think there is an opportunity to change that, and these I think the opportunity lies in how remittances today, the process, how it's built, and I think the newer technologies like blockchain, distributed ledger can definitely help, no doubt.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may add on that,
Yeah.
It's interesting to see. We're observing that because we're using Ethereum a lot for cross-border transfers of USDT, USDC, and other tokens, and on that front as well. It's kind of a victim of its own success, because the transaction fees today, even on Ethereum, which is supposed to be cheaper because it's blockchain, right, are at the highest. We've never charged that much our customers in terms of Ethereum blockchain fees than last month, and I think that's where we need to look at existing blockchain solutions and see how they can evolve to be less gas consuming in the case of Ethereum, or other blockchains, less costly. New models needs to be put in place to ensure that the technology itself doesn't bring up the cost that has been removed elsewhere in cost efficiency, in better AML and CFT checks, thanks to the traceability of blockchain transactions.
Great. Awesome. All right, so let's move on to our second topic, which is to discuss the payments and remittances best practices across the region. So first question is, over the last few years, what best practices have you seen in the remittance and payments industry to overcome some of the challenges we just talked about? So I'll start it with you, Raghu.
Several best practices actually that I have seen being taken into consideration. One is, of course, in a remittance process, there are so many intermediaries that add to that process. They add friction to that entire process. I have seen a lot of companies try to remove these intermediaries, make the entire process, or as much as they possibly can, frictionless. And of course, the main thing here is usage of technology. There are applications. This is not including blockchain. Blockchain is going to completely make this frictionless. But there are some technologies that they've used which make the progress actually closer to being frictionless. And I've seen that happen. Apps I've seen being created to improve the usability, to improve the to onboard, for example, walk-in customers. You know, in most of the countries, when remittances are being done, these remittances are being done for people who may not have a bank account. So it is necessary for these remittance providers to take, like Alex was alluding to, you know, the KYC information and things like that. At the same time, be able to give that service to them. So this is, of course, the usage of apps and things like that have actually brought some change, and this is being looked at as best practice across the globe, and not just in Middle East and India. It's Southeast Asia, European continent, and so on.
Okay, great. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, I used to work for Swift in the standards department. I have a passion for standards, and I think the adoption of standards has been something that has been observed by the banking industry, central bank industry, for both retail and wholesale type of activities, which is always good. And I think what we're trying to encourage, I'm now in the crypto space and the digital assets industry, and what I'm trying to encourage is also the use of those standards in the digital asset space. I believe that there is a need for a full integration of the various payments methods that are and will exist in the future. There are the amount of different ways of transferring money now is considerable, but if those are not interoperable, cannot talk to one another, cannot be reconciled with one another through the adoption of international standards like the ISO 20022 standards, or identifier standards like the legal entity identifier, or even token identifiers like the digital token identifier standard that is now being produced by ISO. If you don't have a common set of standards that can enable integration between all those various payments methods, you won't get you will really go nowhere, and the cost efficiencies that you're trying to achieve will never be achieved. That's one component. I think another important improvement and innovation that is changing the game, and I think Raghu did mention that as well in terms of walk-in customers, I think is how KYC is done. You do have now eKYC solutions, for example, around compliance that are pretty much amazing, really, where you can make sure that someone is KYC'd in about 1 or 2 minutes, certain that he's not used a copy of a passport, that his face is matching the passport, for example, and so on and so forth, or the domestic ID. And those solutions are improving by the day, thanks to AI, thanks to a lot of additional technology that are layered on top of it to make it more efficient, more precise, and less prone to errors. And I'm looking forward to also those new technologies to getting better and better to accelerate the onboarding of customers, to improve the user experience of customers, and again, reduce costs of remittance and payments in general.
Yeah. In fact, if I may add a couple of things, the improvement, I've seen a noticeable improvement. I've seen in the Middle East specifically that about 8-9 years ago, it used to take 24 to 48 hours to transfer that money from Dubai or Saudi Arabia, or Riyadh to Mumbai or Bangalore. Now I see that it can be done in about 30 minutes, but 30 minutes is still, I believe, is fairly high. This is the area of real-time payments. I mean, we have to instantly get. People don't want to wait, and even 30 minutes is a long wait. So I think that movement is happening, and I agree with Alex. Some of the things like AI for KYC and for all the other processes is accelerating that timeline. But I still feel that moving to DLT, it is a big step. A lot of people may not realize the benefits today. I mean, they don't see it. A lot of people believe that, I have not seen a use case, I don't see it happen, and so on. But I think they have to take the first step to technologies like DLT, use Roxe, for example, for these payments, and have those instantaneous payments possible.
That's awesome. That's a really good segue to the next question, and we'll start with you, Raghu. So, you talked about these. We talked about these innovations like AI and developing really good mobile apps. But for companies who haven't done that yet, who have customers in the maybe a very traditional way of doing remittances, what are some advice on how they should implement some of these best practices?
So the first thing I always look at, even when I was giving solutions to my existing customers or new customers, one of the things that I used to tell them is the first best practice you need to implement is at the front end. You need to make sure that the person who is going to be sending that money, or the customer, has a good feeling about what he's doing. If the user interface is really bad, is cumbersome, right there is a lost opportunity for the bank or the financial institution or the remittance provider. The idea is that it has to be simple. Simplicity is important. It has to be simple, and it has to be carried out in a couple of steps, not more than 3. And a lot of companies are actually doing this today. They are trying to put in apps that don't go more than 3 steps. They take a reference from Amazon, which tries to make this happen, and they try to implement this. Second thing is, I was talking about in the entire value chain, there's a lot of intermediaries, a lot of systems, and Alex talked about integrations also. I think they carry a legacy. They have been there for some time. A lot of applications have been implemented around. There is no synergy between the applications. They still, a lot of institutions I know are still banking on batch processes to execute some of the work. So all these things have to be, again, re-looked at, reimagined. So they have to get in, fold their hair, fold their sleeves, get their hands dirty. It takes a bit of time, takes a bit of effort, but I think it's all worth it. And finally, I think it is time for them to also look at what else can be done. And this is, again, I go back to DLT. DLT is a disruptor, a game-changing innovation in technology. And I think these are things that they need to take into account when they're trying to make things better for their customers.
Yeah, definitely. We'll discuss that in more detail, definitely in the last section. So before moving there, Alex, any thoughts on just very practical advice for companies and how to implement some of these best practices?
I think it's all about hiding the complexity of the technology from the customer. You mentioned, Raghu, the user experience, and I fully agree with you. In the world of blockchain and cryptocurrencies where I am, too many companies are trying to explain private keys and public keys and why you need to be careful, blah, 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 blah. Honestly, most users on the planet, if we want blockchain and cryptocurrencies and stable coins to be adopted, most customers don't need to know and shouldn't know about how it works. It's up to providers like Roxe, like OnChain, Custodian, and others to hide that complexity away from them while ensuring the security of the system and ensuring that they have the best user experience, the 3-click that Raghu mentioned. They want to do a payment, they want to open a wallet, whatever it's called. It can simply be called an account. It doesn't have to be called a wallet. They receive that money in, they transfer that money out as at a click of a button. And the trust comes from how the product is built and how you present it to the customer, not how the customer understands private keys and all those complex stuff that 90% of them will not understand. My mother will never understand it, and she doesn't need to.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so I think in some ways we've gotten 2 experts who are very strong on the blockchain cryptocurrency side. But before we kind of dive on all the innovations in that side, where we see shift gears talk about innovation, the first question really is about what are some of the non-blockchain innovations, because there are a lot of those as well. We want to make sure we cover that before we just focus on the blockchain innovations. So maybe we start with you, Alex. From your perspective, what are some of the non-blockchain innovations that you've seen in the payments and remittance industry?
Well, I'm going to have to come back to eKYC. I think it's a field that is evolving by the day, and it's really cool to see solutions that really are solving the challenge of making sure we know our customers and we don't onboard customers that shouldn't be onboarded. And I think it's the first key principle before doing any payments, right? Is making sure that you know who you're dealing with and who you're transferring to as well. And there are tools now and more that are able to monitor, to screen in a way more efficient. Sorry, it's 9:30 p.m. here. More efficient way than what it used to be, and that's really to me critical to remittance and payments.
Great. Raghu, what are your thoughts on some of the non-blockchain innovations?
I actually have a really good example, great example actually, right here in India. It's called the Unified Payment Interface, UPI for short. This is actually an instant real-time payment system developed by the government of India to facilitate interbank transactions for customers. One of the things that the Indian government had in mind is to digitize as many things as possible, and one of those included the money transfer funds between accounts, and this was basically based on a very simple idea that all these bank accounts that we have in India, they're all tagged to customers with a unique citizen identifier, and of course a mobile phone, which is again unique for that individual. Join these two together and you get something called as the virtual payment address or the UPI ID, and then you're good to go. Now, any bank, any app that can use this interface can have two individuals or a bunch of individuals transact between each other using just a simple phone number. So Josh, I have your phone number. I can send you $80, $100 right now, right here. And this is instantaneous. I get it immediately. And it's such an amazing innovation because fruit and vegetable vendors, right, on carts, they never used to take electronic payments, mobile payments. COVID hit, and they did not have a choice but to move into this area, the digital era, so to say. And now I have seen vendors telling me that they don't accept cash. And these are really, laborers I'm talking about. They earn probably $100 a day, and all they want to do is transact using the UPI. And I believe this is the biggest innovation that I've seen. I also have another one is of course the M-Pesa in South Africa. Again, I think this was started by Vodafone, if I remember correctly. But this in case was a telephone company, telecommunications company. Both of them were the first in their respective domains. This is UPI was the first to be done by a government entity, and M-Pesa was first innovation by a telecom provider. And both of them with a single mindset, had a single purpose, sending money instantaneously, moving payments, making it as simple as possible. And I think these two are really great innovations that do not include blockchain.
May I add on the first example you shared, and that's something that we have in Singapore as well. It's called Pay Now, so you can pay anybody with this phone number. And I think the next step for that type of amazing, easy solution, whereby you provide an email address or a phone number, and you can transfer money to the proxy behind it, who has been KYC'd and everything is clear, is doing that internationally. So we don't have yet a cross-border solution whereby I provide the phone number of my sister in Canada and I can transfer money to her. And I think that will be the next step,
Yeah.
in terms of proxy and how you identify your counterparty rather than by a very complex account number, IBAN, and Swift PIC code number, if you see what I mean.
Agree.
Yeah.
That's definitely the next step. Sorry.
Yeah. So I think, no, it's great to hear that there's a lot of innovation that's non-blockchain related, but that kind of sets up a philosophical question I would get both of you to weigh in on. So, at Roxe, we believe that in order to dramatically improve the global payment and remittance systems, it does require a major paradigm shift and using blockchain technology. So the question to you guys is it possible to really improve the current global payment remittance networks and businesses by making steady incremental improvements, so basically non-blockchain, or do you think it is necessary to have a major revolutionary change in order to make substantial improvements? So maybe we'll start with you, Raghu. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Oh, I'm a big believer in this one. A big believer in revolutionary change, Josh. I understand that in a lot of areas you cannot implement a revolutionary change, but specifically in payments, I think you can. With the number of startups that are coming up and a number of these innovations happening around, all these are guiding institutions to move to that revolutionary kind of change, and not build step by step and in phases or something like that. If you had asked me 3 years ago when blockchain or the innovation really was not in the mainstream, I would have said, yeah, you have to go step by step. You have to do a evolutionary change. And I've sold solutions that require that kind of an approach where you do it in phases. But in this case, I think revolutionary is something that the people have to look at as an option.
Okay. Alex, what are your thoughts?
I do believe that the payment industry could benefit from a revolution. I don't think it's going to happen as a revolution, to be fully transparent, because these things you don't change 150 years, if not more, industry overnight. But what will happen is the creeping in of the revolution of blockchain, let's call it this way, that will progressively eat up the other ways and the more traditional ways of transferring money. That's going to happen in the next 10 years. I'm convinced of that. It's going to be through the emergence, of course, of solutions like Roxe, solutions, also the issuance of CBDCs by central banks, by the issuance of private money by either commercial banks or even companies like Facebook. Why not? And I think it's not going to be a problem anymore. Today, it's kind of a political issue. People see that as, oh my God, some people are challenging the role of central banks. I don't think they're challenging the role of central banks or government. They're trying to find ways to be more efficient. And of course, also to keep their customer happy and of course, bring up their revenue. But what's wrong with that? As long as it's done properly, it's done in a compliant way again, that it is not disrupting and facilitating criminal activities. If it's done very seriously, professionally, in my view, there shouldn't be any resistance from incumbent. There should be adoption by incumbents. There should be enrichment by the incumbents of those solutions that are sometimes and often created by people who don't necessarily have the banking experience and would benefit from it. I think it's just a question of stopping what I say the state of delusion or the state of denial that this change is happening, and embrace it and enable it. Be it a fintech, be it a bank, be it a central bank, be it a government.
Yeah, no, great answers there. I think if I just, because this is a philosophical question, I kind of reminded, of Hegel. So Hegel's dialectic process, right? There's like a thesis, a new idea comes around. There's a natural antithesis, kind of reaction against the idea. And then out comes from that a very healthy synthesis of kind of combining the best features. So here, I see blockchain as the thesis, And now there's like a little bit of the antithesis, where governments are, slow to adopt regulation. Some of them are very concerned and kind of are trying to stop it. But outcome from that will just be a really healthy synthesis of those ideas and how to, tie in the traditional financial services world to the new solutions that all the blockchain fintech startups such as us and all the other companies are doing. Okay, so let's move on to the square question then here of, what are some of the blockchain-based innovations that you have seen, and what do you think about these technologies? For example, what are your thoughts about Roxe, Ripple, or any other blockchain-based technologies that you've seen? So maybe we start this with Alex.
Well, I think everybody's trying to bring its brick to the wall that we all trying to the house that we all trying to create or to build together. I think XRP Ripple was had the I would say could be praised for being one of the first to try to do something different and to challenge the status quo. With or without success, depending on depending on the strategy they've taken initially and progressively evolved, and that's part of a startup. That's part of a business. You evolve your strategy. Roxe, I like the way you're trying to achieve a similar objective, but with an FX component that is managed differently. I do like the fact that others are also coming around, which puts pressure on you guys and on everybody to be the best that you need to be sustainable in this industry. And that's what we're going to see. And there will be more. They've been experimenting in Singapore about cross-border usage of blockchain with Ubin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in terms of phases, and now it's going to become a product that will be also launched as a commercial product. So there are going to be a lot of those solutions coming up. I think it's going to, a bit like at the beginning of internet, and you had Yahoo, Google, Netscape, and all those different solutions out there. Some will become monsters like Google is today. Others will find their niche and stay medium size but still relevant, and others will disappear, and we'll see who will win. But it's very exciting, and as long as there is some feeling that there's a need for adoption of standards, for example, and ensuring some level of interoperability, I think we'll be fine. Otherwise, it's going to be complicated to manage in the future.
Okay, thank you. All right, Raghu, what are your thoughts on some of the blockchain-based solutions you've seen?
So I handle blockchain solutions across.
Oh, I think your audio cut
changes. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Sorry. Is it okay?
Yep.
No? Okay. All right. Sorry. So I handle blockchain across domains, not just financial industry, the domain. So I see a lot of changes happening across, across the globe, across different domains. And I see, the farm to fork kind of an approach where the supply chain of food produce is being tracked, traced, and for the consumer, so I can scan a QR code and figure out where my milk came from, where my rice grain came from, and so on and so forth. I have also seen a lot of innovation on the logistics side using blockchain. And of course, banking and financial industry, I think, was the first to adopt some of the use cases on blockchain. I see that happening. Specifically on the payment side, of course, there's a lot of regulations that are still being discussed, still being framed. But I believe that the governments are going to be a lot more agreeable to changes, agreeable to moving blockchain into mainstream for their own benefit. Government of Dubai is going to be on blockchain completely. That's what they say. I think 50% of that is already on blockchain. And our finance minister just recently said that, apart from Bitcoin, which they have some concerns about, cryptocurrency trading, they have concerns about, but they are not averse to blockchain as a technology. They want to go with CBDC, and they've already started putting together a framework for that purpose. So I'm seeing a lot of changes. And Roxe, for example, I understand now with the kind of knowledge I have got about Roxe as a payment network. I see so much value. I was talking about cost reduction. This is exactly where Roxe can play a very important part in reducing the cost of remittance from between 6 to 10%, coming down to 3% or less. That is where Roxe will shine. And I think as more banks and financial institutions adopt, it's only going to go better than what it's right now. Finally, I think to DLT or blockchain as a technology is there used to be a point where every problem was looked at with the DLT as a solution. They try to fit DLT for everything. But now I think they have realized where it works and where it doesn't, and it's clear. And so the adoption is going to be a lot more faster.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. So let's have one final question before we go to the Q&A. And so I'm going to ask something a little bit more unconventional. So let's say I'm a genie and I could grant you one wish, right, in the area of payments remittance. So if I could just snap my fingers and make your wish come true, what would you wish for in the terms of improving the world of payments and remittances? So I'll start with you, Raghu. What are your thoughts on that?
I want to send payments the speed of thought. I should be able to think. I want to send money to Alex, and I should be able to do that, if that's possible.
Okay.
I think it's possible. But
yeah, definitely we'll work towards that. Alex, what do you think?
Going back to the topic Raghu and myself discussed early on proxies for identifying the receiver of money, my dream is that effectively what I can do in Singapore in a confined environment and very technological environment, I can do cross-border, where I can do a 1 second payment just using the phone number of the person I'm trying to reach, or his email address or her email address, and without having to put extra information on why I'm doing that payment and so on and so forth, because everything in terms of compliance is handled at the back through more and more and smarter technology that helps banks or financial institutions or providers deal with that risk.
Mm-hmm. Great.
I agree with you, Alex. More practically, I would want to have that kind of a process enabled. Somebody should be able to send from the US to India with just a phone number. That's an amazing thing to have, practically speaking.
And so I think some of the technology he's talking about, right, it's really about how do we ensure that this is the actual person, the KYC, AML part of it. It's also about reducing the cost. It's also about the speed. It's also about the interoperability. So I think all these technologies will converge and combine to help build that holistic solution. And definitely, I know that Roxe wants to be a part of that, help build that, and I know you guys do as well. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, so that kind of wraps up our normal time. Let me just scan some of the questions for Q&A. So thank you for sharing, the Indian government example, UPI. Tell us more about the role of governments in some of the other countries. And so, for example, are they encouraging or discouraging the use of blockchain as a way to improve the industry? So maybe we'll start with you, Raghu, on any thoughts on that question in terms of role of the government in some of the other countries?
So I don't think that the governments will discourage use of blockchain as a technology per se. The use of, discouragement would be on the kind of applications that are being developed on blockchain, but blockchain itself is not going to be discouraged. And a recent survey that I was reading about is pointing to the fact that a lot of governments around the world are already looking at use cases on blockchain. And it not necessarily is on financial services, right? And Alex talked about eKYC. They are looking at similar thing, which is central KYC, CKYC, where the government or the or central bank can manage all the KYC data centrally and along with the other banks as partners with the central bank on blockchain. They are looking at vaccination certificates today. The government's looking at having vaccination certificates on blockchain. Airlines would want to have rewards on blockchain. So blockchain as a technology, I think it is here to stay, and it is here to be adopted by everyone. Apps, however, remain to be seen. Depends on how compliant it is to the regulations locally. If it is compliant, I don't think there'll be any problem.
Great, Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add really. I do see also countries around my region where I am, so Singapore, but also ASEAN, like Thailand, Malaysia, and other governments and government agencies or central banks jumping on the blockchain bandwagon, not just as an experiment like it used to be, not just like a proof of concept, but also but as a pilot or as a real project. One interesting example is Cambodia in ASEAN, who has adopted blockchain and CBDCs actually for distribution of government support to poor people who do have a phone but don't have an account number or a bank account, and that's happening now in a live mode, not as a proof of concept, and I think that will continue.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think speaking about the role of government in encouraging innovation and about CBDCs, so I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Roxe just announced last week that we're offering a free CBDC payments and platform for the central banks of developing countries to launch their own CBDCs. And we believe this is really to help them improve their economies, it help them get the unbanked to have more access to to be financially included in the industry. And we really look forward to working with the central banks and NGOs under this initiative. And so we're actively starting to reach out to them now. I think we have time for one more question. So. So how do you think COVID has affected customer behavior in the sending and receiving of remittances? So any thoughts there on, I think earlier you guys already talked about how, COVID has led to some fundamental changes in user behavior. So Raghu, I think you might have mentioned that already, but what are your thoughts there on that? How do you think COVID has affected customer behavior?
So I like, you're right. We talked about it a little while ago. The idea of cash is now being, people don't want to touch cash. They're actually scared. In most of the cases, they are scared to accept cash from another person. So that is actually changing the way they look at cash itself. And this is how, if you look at the progress from cash to a digital methodology of transfer, it can actually progress into CBDC, where cash is completely eventually removed from the equation, and everything is going to be digital, and that's a great thing. Cash will eventually, I think, become a museum piece.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Alex, what do you think?
Well, I think everybody has become digital by the fact that we were all stuck at home and not being able to go to a shop to buy stuff, to meet people and bring money to people. So I think people have increased the level of acceptance of technology in general at all ages, to do their grocery shopping delivered at home, to rent movies, and also to do payments. I think there are numbers showing that the electronic ways of doing payments has increased during 2020. People have taken new habits, and I don't think they will lose those habits. They will stay for the foreseeable future, and they will only increase. I mentioned early on that there were a lot of scams and also issues with regards to this digitization, but it remains a very small portion of the entire business that we're talking about here. And I think it's not enough to push people back to cash money, as Raghu was mentioning, or to the old ways. I think it has accelerated. COVID has accelerated this trend, and it will only accelerate further in the future.
Yeah, And if I take the digitization again, just another important information. In December last year, I think UPI in India clocked about 2 billion transactions. You can imagine how many people now are trying to use the digital form of currency. I mean, and that is increasing steadily. It started with when it was launched in 2016. I think 75,000 people may have transacted in UPI, and 75,000 to 2 billion. I mean, see the movement there. So it is going to become a norm, I think, very soon.
Yeah, and if I may add on that, in terms of the fears that people may have about and that includes government, by the way, who may have a fear of those type of technologies being misused. Let's not forget that money laundering, for example, is a business that moves 2 to 5 billion a year.
Yeah.
Just on the SWIFT network, every day 5 billion is being moved around, and it's only for SWIFT network. So can you imagine all the other networks that are like in India transmitting money around India and cross-border? It's very little. The risks that is being taken by using digital. It is there, it is managed, it's better and better managed because of AI, because of new solutions out there, but it's not a threat at all to use digital ways of doing payments nowadays. It's actually probably better, and blockchain, by the way, is helping tracing those criminals way easier than it used to be with cash money.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, guys. So I think I'm going to also weigh in on this. I mean, just as we started the webinar with COVID, we kind of ended the last question with COVID. On a personal level, here's an anecdote, right? So my mom, who's elderly, she's the type that always went to the bank to deposit checks and to withdraw cash. And because of COVID, she had to stay home for all these months. And so, we convinced her to download the mobile app for her bank and to actually be able to, take pictures of the checks that she needs to cash to do that. So for somebody who's, for all her life, really hardly on computers, and then only recently, and then now hardly on mobile phones and smartphones and hardly on mobile apps, has come a long way in terms of digital adoption. So I think that COVID has really forced the world to really change in terms of how we do meetings, how we kind of receive payments, how we kind of convey messages. So it was kind of a big major challenge for the world, but also a huge opportunity, a huge catalyst to kind of spur individuals, companies, and governments to all think new things, try new things, and to innovate. And that's why I think that it kind of also kind of gave a catalyst to the use of blockchain, because now governments are starting to realize there's a lot of potential in blockchain solutions. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. So on behalf of Roxe, thank you I would like to thank our panel of thought leaders, Raghu, Krishnamurthy, and Alex Kech, for sharing your thoughts and insights with the audience. My name is Josh Lee, the Chief Business Officer at Roxe. And if there's any way we can help your company with cross-border payments or remittances, please let me or anyone at Roxe know. You can fill out the contact us form at our website, roxe.io. Our next Roxe webinar will be at the end of April, and we hope you'll be able to join us. So until next time, take care, everyone.